a stream. So normally I want to do one color each video, but I had to break green into 2 parts because I wasn't feeling as well last time. But hopefully we can finish green today. I don't know if we'll do color, multicolor today. I think I'll just say multicolor for next time probably, because I can only keep streaming for so long. I wasn't feeling as well last time. But hopefully we can finish green today. I don't. Okay, I'm just making sure my audio is working. So we're just gonna continue where we left off. If you need to have more context, you can watch the VOD. Galactic Wayfarer. Sorry, I'm just posting something. Anyway. So Galactic Wayfarer. Creature, human scout. I forgot to turn off my night shift. Galactic Wayfarer. Creature, human scout. The art is done by Quentin and Liam. Galactic Wayfarer. 2 generic, 1 green. Creature, human scout. When this creature enters, create a lander token. It's an artifact with 2 generic, tap 1. Sacrifice this token. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Mostly the edge cannot be measured, but some will spend their lives trying anyway. So this person, they don't really look like they're part of any of the major factions. I can't really say if they're Wildcat either, because Wildcats seem to be mostly around. Wildcats seem like pirates and like I guess like illegal miners, kind of like they mercenaries, pirates, people who like pick up the scraps that they go in dangerous areas to pick up like trash and stuff and treasure to try to sell. Wildcat miners, Wildcat teams, an independent ship and crew not affiliated with a larger organization. Most act as freelancers, smugglers, and small-time miners. I guess this guy could be a Wildcat. I don't really know. The point I'm trying to make here is that this guy doesn't really seem like he's part of any of the major factions. He doesn't really match the Palatinate, because the Palatinate is definitely more white and gold. They don't have this much green on them. Obviously not an EU Midian or a Cav or the Monoist are also have a lot of like they use a lot of their alabile metal, and gonna be black and purple in coloration. So I think this is just like a random person. Could be aligned with the Pinnacle, I suppose, but still unclear. I presume this is just a random person living within the universe. I imagine not. It just makes sense that not literally every character would be a part of some other faction or major faction we hear about. 2 generic, 1 green. So like it's a pretty simple green card. Usually green is, green has a lot of cards that if you play a card, you can search your library for a land. This is like a more roundabout way of doing that, where you can play a card and it gets you a lander token, which you can then use to search for a land and put onto the battlefield tapped. As far as like philosophy goes, I think I've already talked about green a little bit in the last video, but green basically believes in growth through. Is it growth through wisdom or growth through acceptance? Sorry, I can't believe I forgot that. Growth through acceptance, which is basically green arguing that you should accept the world for as it is instead of trying to force change. A lot of people think green is like the anti-artifact color, and that anybody who uses any kind of technology is not green. Like if you wear glasses, you can't be green, kind of thing. And there's just like this idea that you cannot be green aligned unless you're just like bareback, fucking naked in the woods, living on like on a paleo diet, which is a very narrow vision of what green is. Green can be that, but green is all about just accepting the world for as it is, and that can mean accepting like technology or certain artifice. A good example of this would be something like a Kaladesh, where there are green characters that create our inventors and use artifacts, And you might see this as like a contradiction, and it's important to point out that, for one, not every artifact represents necessarily an inherently like artificial thing. Like some artifacts are just like foods, which can be like apples or something, or sometimes treasures represented with like ore instead of like necessarily artificial things. But also, green might see people creating stuff or inventing stuff as a natural part of the world in certain ways. Like if you see like a beaver building a dam, you wouldn't go like, "Oh, the beaver is an artificial part of the world that must be destroyed. We must destroy the dam." How God forbid a bee build like a hive, or a wasp a nest, or a bird a nest, or a beaver, build a dam. So in that same way, green can see like certain things as like extensions of nature, and there are certain situations in which you're just kind of forced to deal with the hand you're dealt, which is like green's kind of all about, just accepting it. So, for example, on New Capenna, everything outside the city is basically destroyed and unlivable. So, in this case, green is all about accepting, like, accepting the traditions of the city, and then understanding that, like, the city is just the way things are now. Trying to fight that and change that is not necessarily helpful. So, green can't accept things like cities or technology as like a natural part of the world that, or a natural extension of nature, because it also depends on how you define nature, right? Because some might argue that what is unnatural is basically anything that's impossible. So in that way, you could see humans building stuff as like a natural part, like it's what we do. It's like it's like a part of nature. Now green's also about like living in harmony with nature, and that's like a whole different thing. But the point green being that green can have a connection or liking for certain forms of technology. Now generally, it might not like all new technology as much as like blue might. Like it might be like a little bit more wary philosophically in certain areas, but you can't have a green character that like loves technology. They would just probably have a different approach to it than blue. Um, so here we see, I think the green kind of comes through like, well, first of all, just lands. Green tends to care about lands, and that's part of the idea that green's about accepting the world for as it is. So it's like trying to understand the world, the lands, the different colors, etc. One thing you also get with green is that green tends to be like the most wooburg color, in the fact that green has the most support for going into other colors or creating other forms of mana, and that idea is like an extension of green's like acceptance. The idea that blue, black, white, and red, where blue and white and black might be like, oh, I can change minds, I can change people's opinion, I can make it so this is like the ideal world in my opinion, the number one. Green might also believe that, but green might also believe that there are just natural philosophies that exist. Like people have these opinions, and you can't always change everybody. Not everyone is changed, right? Green is definitely like more like on the nature side, the nature versus nurture debate, nurture versus nature debate. Where blue's definitely nurture. Green's like some people will just think certain things. You can't really always change that. So it's kind of reflected in green. You know, having like a lot of lander tokens that can search for any basic land. It can tap for any color of mana, et cetera, et cetera. Like the idea of understanding or accepting um people for who they are to a certain extent. Like obviously if it starts deeming things unnatural or messing with nature in certain ways, or I should also point out that green isn't necessarily the nature color either. When I say natural, I just mean like the default state. Like what green is all about is basically just accepting like the world for as it is, accepting its default state. And usually that's going to be its natural state, but like not always. It's not always the same thing. So it's kind of like a shorthand, I would say, as like, oh, green's the nature color. Like green is the nature color so far as the natural state is what we agree on to be the default state of the world. Um, and here we have like a green character who's just trying to understand, you know, trying to understand the part of being green is also like understanding like what came before to inform where you are now. So like if you want to understand like the roles bear have in the ecosystem, you might look at like statistics regarding what bears did for the ecosystem previously, like how many creatures they killed, what happens when a bear population spikes, what happens when it lowers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think here is something similar where it's kind of just like understanding your place in the universe by kind of measuring it or mapping it, which could tip into blue a little bit, but I think it makes sense for this green card. Um, Here we have this person, so clearly a very triumphant pose. If you look at them, like they're standing straight up, even though the leg is like a little bit bent for a little bit of extra balance. Their fist is like it's up. It's kind of like almost like a triumphant pose. And to emphasize this, once again, we see playing around with height, where this person is standing above this grass and wheat or whatever here. Um, so like they're also like they're clearly like someone who maps out the universe. So it's reflected in the fact that in order to get a better view of like the terrain around them, they're up somewhere high, right? Because if you're in this grass looks very tall, and if we assume that this camera is like about the height of an average person who's looking up at this person, it might be kind of hard to get a sense of the full terrain. And that might be a bit presumptuous to assume that this camera's exactly like where the average person would be. It could be higher, it could be lower. But the point is, like, the idea is that this person has a good lay of the land, a better lay of the land by getting up on top of here instead of like wadding, walking, like trying to trot to the grass. Um, I do think it's interesting. Like, I'm not sure how much is like this must probably be reading too much into it, but I mean, you're watching this article or someone like goes through an article. You're watching a stream where someone just kind of goes through and talks about Magic the Gathering art, and so I assume you're okay with a little bit of nitpicky, even if you don't always agree. It's very interesting that this person's body, like, there's like these objects between, like, in the background, and then the blue sky is right behind their head, almost like a sort of like frame, even though it's like obviously a weird shape. Um, these plants are very interesting because they kind of look like weird flesh pods. I just kind of like the design. I just like how they didn't just go with normal plants. Like, the grass is very mundane, very like normal grass, like grass you'd see on Earth. But I do like how these like plants are, like, weird like flesh pods. But the thing is, I can't tell if they're actually made of flesh because I could totally see them being made of, like, some weird fruit, some like massive fruit esque or like wrapped leaf, full of like honey or amber or something like that. I don't know why I said honey. Like, plants naturally make honey, but you know what I mean, like a sap or something. Um, there's also like this weird. I think these are like wind turbines. I assume that's like their version of like wind powered. I think Adagia has high winds. I think it is stated that Adagia has very strong winds. Yeah, it is a world that's defined by its powerful and steady winds. I will say, part of the reason I mentioned that Galactic Wayfarer, did I say the name of the artist, Quentin Gleam? I will say that part of the reason I was interested in the fact that Galactic Wayfarer doesn't seem like it aligns that they're aligned with any of the major factions. It's because we know Adegi is like a major stronghold for the Sunstar Free Company and the Palatinate by extension. Um, so it's very interesting that they chose someone who's not Sunstar, even though because it could have easily done it. I assume it's because it's a green character, not a white line character, and the Sunstars are mostly white aligned. Um, so obviously this is like alluding to Adegi as like strong winds. There's actually like a whole lot going in the background. Really, there's like some sort of smoke or something or pollen, and then like these trees, and then a fan, and these ships whirling by. And I love how like the ships whirl by like around this rock, like to show their mobility and how fast they move. And the trails remind me of like ether, because ether tends to be like bluish, purplish, or just blue. So maybe implying they use ether as a fuel source. Um, Also, part of the reason I'm so certain this is a dig is because it has like the weird mirror things. I think there's some kind of mirror or solar panel or something, which we know Adigia has. Like, you can see it here on the Adigia card. Adigia is like the only planet that has like these, which is a very striking feature of Adigia. Um, I guess this also like conveys how tall these are because there's like clouds going around this. But anyway, um, so yeah. Why did I open this like 5 times? Gene pollinator. I remember at first seeing this, I thought this might be like some weird strain of Eumedian, but I think it's just a robot. It's a robot insect. So I think it's a robot that's designed to look vaguely kind of like an Eumedian. It's a little weird. Um, I guess it's like their insect, so it's like an insect horse. So, but whenever I talk for like a little bit, my I get mucusy for some reason. But then it like goes away the longer I talk, so I don't know what's up with that. But Gene Pollinator, 1 green, artifact creature, robot insect. Tap an untapped permanent you control. Add 1 mana of any color. Eating medians have engineered a device or species to manage every single stage of Terra Symbiosis. Um, Art is by Milvoy Keran. I gotta learn how to pronounce things with accent marks. So this could be some sort of weird cyborg thing because it mentions device or species. So this implies that maybe they manipulate the genes of things that aren't just Eumedians, but it could also just be a robot. But this kind of looks like weirdly organic. So the reason I'm like moving back and forth on this is because Eumedians also just have like their ships and stuff just tend to look organic, just like in general. So it's kind of hard to say if this is just like a organic kind of like robot or if it's like a weird cyborg thing. I'm leaning towards weird cyborg thing. Um, it is a robot insect, but sometimes Magic just puts on creature types on like constructs and robots that just like resemble or built to like built to mimic certain things. This could just be a robot that's built to look like an insect, but I think it's like a weird. I think the fact that it mentions the device or species kind of confirms that it's got organic parts. Um, Although I don't think it's an EU Midian as we would understand it. I think it's just I think it's EU Midian made, but it itself was not an EU Midian. Um, so in this art we have so the foreground's obviously like a darker shade of green. Like if you look back here, it's more like a yellowy tint, which helps immediately tell us that this is the foreground. Like this is green and a little bit of brown here. Um, Obviously looks kind of horse-like. Makes sense to beast of burden, but it has like insect legs and it has like these interesting like pink stripes. We do see EU Midians come in like pink. Most of the colors we see EU Midians, they're mostly green, but occasionally we see them like in pink, pinkish purple. Um, Maybe we can pull up an example of that. Although I imagine E-Midians can come in any wild, any like like any basically any color because E-Midians are like they're gene edited to do to do whatever purpose. Now they aren't a hive mind; they do have free will, but they are like designed in theory to like to fill a purpose. And we know EU-Midians can vary drastically depending on what system they're from. So I would imagine that E-Midians can basically be any color, but the ones we've seen from Sothera at least are currently mostly green and pink. Majority green, secondary a little bit of pink. And here we have like this device which is like clearly strapped onto this creature. I do like how like this is like one of the situations where I just love the art and magic. Like, I love just like how weird this is, where it's kind of like a machine, but it's like very smooth, but also it's got like these weird like turbines or jets. It's like releasing some sort of pollen or something. Um, I'm not sure if there's really a strong reason for flavor wise for it to add 1 mana of any color you can. I guess it taps and untap permanent of you control. So I guess the idea is that you're pollinating it in some way by tapping it and then getting some resources out of it. But then again, it could just be a small green creature you can tap for mana, which green loves. Yeah. Germinating worm. Got to close it here. Germinating worm. 4 generic, 1 green. Creature, plant, worm. When this creature enters, you gain 2 life. Warp, 1 generic, 1 green. So this is another situation where I'm not really sure what the warp represents flavor-wise, because this clearly isn't like a creature that would just get on a ship normally. I don't know if the implication is that the worm can weft travel or move incredibly fast through space, but it seems like it's on planet side. It seems like Evendo, because we know Evendo is mostly ice with like a terraformed equator here. So it's like this is like mostly ice, and then a terraformed equator from what the EU-Midians are doing. So this is clearly like somewhere. This is clearly something that was either in the frost or lives in the ice. And it's just going wild. When it enters, it gains 2 life. So it is called germinating worm. So and germinate is like it's kind of like to reproduce, right, or to like spread in a specific way. Germinate, to begin to grow and put out shoots after a period of dormancy. So okay, so that also tells us that I think the idea here with the flavor of this card is that it was in the ice and it emerged. It emerged because it was germinating, and now it's like flowering. Also, the way Evendo is handled is very interesting because, like I said, green isn't necessarily against technology, but I think a lot of people would have heard about the EU-Midians and they've been like, "Oh, that's a blue faction." Absolutely, like they're editing stuff. But I think it's very interesting take to see how the EU-Midians view what they're doing as natural, and also that this world isn't like, and that this world does have life forms that are like acting in response to the EU-Midians present. And I think the EU-Midians probably have this idea that they're kind of more in harmony with nature, and you kind of get to see why, because there's like stuff in the ice that seems to be waking up because whatever they're doing. But even if the EU-Midians didn't really care about like what's currently there, I think it still makes sense for a green, because the idea of like, for example, like an invasive species, right? Like you bring a species from one area to another and it starts spreading, and it can't be stopped. And maybe the act of bringing it there might be not green, but like the species, like a green might say like green might also say like, hey, the species is already here. They have the right to just do whatever they want. We shouldn't like interfere with that. But at the same time, green might say an invasive species is unnatural. So it really depends on the character and the specific line of thought you're going with. The artist who drew this is Mons Ray. So I think the gain 2 life just represents the germination, like it's spreading life. So you gain life, like there's just more plants and stuff and worm or whatever. once again, weird that they have worms in this set, but then also they have leviathans that are green. Like this is like I don't think I understand. This is like the first set we've ever got a mono green leviathan, and usually creatures being out of a certain color like that is like a big deal. Like having like black aligned elves, for example, doesn't happen on every plane. Like that so and usually that's usually done make a plane like more unique. Like not every plane has like, for example, Kaldheim has like mono black angels. Not every plane has mono black angels, and that's kind of what makes Kaldheim a bit special. Is that like the average angel is white aligned, but Kaldheim has black aligned angels. Um, as far as the art goes, obviously a lot of ice. Despite it's not a blue card, but there's a lot of ice just because to show this thing bursting out of the ice. It's really like some sort of so once again we're getting like that slanted horizon thing going on. It's hard to tell if this is because this thing's on the side of some sort of mountain or mountainous chunk of ice, or if it's just to add like a bit of action where it's like everything's being unstable, everything's being thrown off. Like this is being broken, the ground below you shattering, so everything's kind of like unstable in this way, so everything's sideways. We also have like a bit of greenery in the background. I don't know if the idea is that this is very close to the equator, or it's just like the EU Midian's making process somewhere, and it's called germinating. Here we see like a bunch of things like growing outward. Assumedly, this could also just be a big part of the worm, I guess. If you see the worm as making maybe like slithering somehow, potentially. Oh, my throat is. It's a little dry. There's a little glow for effect. Like there's something clearly glowing out of this thing. Like it gives you life. So they show like this yellow glow full of life coming outward. Something's growing out. So, but what an interesting creature. I can't really. Also, yeah, I was talking about warp. So the warp may represent, in this case, it might be a little bit of a bend in terms of flavor. Like the idea is that maybe it's in the ice, so it's active and then it gets frozen in the ice, and you can thaw it out of the ice again. Because I'm not really sure how, like, if warp represents just weft travel, I'm not really sure, or like light speed travel. I'm not really sure how this random worm on the planet would be able to do it. Maybe it can. Who's to say? It's Magic the Gathering, so maybe it can travel extremely fast, but I could also see it, maybe the idea that's in the ice, and that's what warp represents. Because like I don't see anybody just moving this thing like on a whim on their ship or whatever. And nor do I think it looks like something that would pilot a ship. Glacier Godmaw, 5 generic, 2 green, creature Leviathan. So once again, we get another green Leviathan. So just to be for clear, this is the first time we've gotten a mono green Leviathan. We've gotten like Simic Leviathans previously, but it's the first time we got a mono green Leviathan. Now, Leviathans can mechanically make a lot of sense in green just because they're big creatures. But up until this point, they basically always had blue in their identity because of the fact that Leviathans are water, and blue has that association with water just because, like, in classical Greek thought, water is connected with things like the water and air specifically, are connected with things like the mind and spirit and higher things that blue might like philosophically. So it's a bit of a metaphorical representation. So, whoa, maybe I'm still a little sick. So Glacier Godmaw, 5 generic, 2 green, trample. When this creature enters, create a land or token. Landfall. When a land control enters, creatures you control get +1 and +1/+1 and gain vigilance and haste until the end of the turn. So one thing that's interesting is that despite like in some of the other art, the ice is kind of like obviously adds a lot of blue, but this is clearly like a very green all everywhere. The sky's like a shaded green. This thing is obviously like a different like tone of green. Like the sky's like a bit more like I want to say less saturated. I'm not 100% sure. Like less saturated just means like the sky is like a bit more gray. I mean, sorry. I think I'm using that wrong. So more saturated means less gray. So I think the sky is a bit more saturated, and that's like more grayish, more of a grayish tone. And the Glacier Godmaw is like more like I wouldn't call it vibrant, but it's definitely more like obviously green and not like greenish gray. And then there's like this green tint all over like almost the entire like art too. Like even though the ice is definitely blue, it definitely feels like a bit more turquoisey in some ways. Like it's like there's like a green tint over everything. So here we have it was clearly an E-Median spaceship. I can tell because of the shape. But Magic does a very good job of like making sure you know what you're looking at in terms of factions most of the time. So for example, Sledge class. I'm not saying this is specifically a Sledge. Oh my god, I might still be a little sick. Sledge class sea chip. I don't think this is specifically a Sledge class sea chip per se, but it's clearly like something similar where it has like the little things tapering off. and it's clearly like an Eumedian. Once again, running and saying it's thawing out of the ice. I do love like it's obvious there's a trail of, like a sudden U-turn. I think they just went with yellow because yellow is next to green on the color wheel, but also it lets you differentiate enough so it doesn't just blend together with all the green that's happening, and it lets you know exactly what motion is being taken. So I do love that. It's like a clear U-turn. Like they're like, oh fucking shit, and they turned around. Um, in contrast to all the green, you have this one like red yellow eye, which is just helps draw attention to like show you that this creature has like a face, something to like latch onto as far as like emotion goes, as much as you can with the giant glacier godmon leviathan thing. It has three pupils, which I just think is a nice visual choice. Um, one thing I touched on before is like usually red is thought of the opposite of usually red is thought of as the opposite of blue, but if you actually look at an actual color wheel, depending on how detailed it is, how many colors it has, generally green and red are actually opposite of each other on the color wheel, which makes them complementary colors. So I think the choice here to have like a mostly red with a bit of yellow eye is interesting, especially since yellow's between, well, I mean yellow's closer to between green and red. Obviously there's orange in between that, but orange between red and yellow. But tramples, I think it's just because it's big. Also, I do love like how the like has like little like tendrils that almost resemble Venus flytraps. Although it's very clear that it itself is not necessarily a plant because it has plants growing on it, but it is not the plant feature type. Trample is just because it's very big. Creates a lander token. I assume the lander token is more to represent what's going on in the scene and less to like represent like the the Leviathan sending out landers. Um, like either the Leviathan's leading you to land, or the idea is that maybe they're planning to land something, and then the Leviathan got in the way. I don't know, or the Leviathan just shaking land up. Landfall. I think the landfall in this idea just generally. I think landfall in the case of Evendo just represents the idea of the ice thawing out, and revealing new lands like forest and mountain stuff. I think landfall in relation to it's a Caveron. I think landfall in relation to Caveron just represents because Caveron's literally falling apart, so I think it represents just stuff flying everywhere. Um, so I think the idea is that when you play landfall, land is thawing out. You now have access to a land, and this thing becomes more active. It's like no longer dormant, so it gains vigilance and haste. I might need to get water really badly. We'll try to do one more. We'll see if I can do one more with the 2 drops of water I have. Also, did the art for last? Did I read that? Who did Who did I read? Did I? Who? Oh my god! Did I read who did the last art for that one? The artist for this one is Bruce Bernasi. Man, that is the sentence of Avernus. Thriving Bluff. Oh, Thriving Isle. Anyway, that was the Doctor Who set. I might do. Cause I'm not like an expert like on comics or anything. I haven't like read a ton, so I might do like a bit of like a comic by analysis on like the Spider-Man and Marvel stuff, but I'm not 100% sure. Because for me personally, usually the canon magic stuff will take priority, and then if I have extra time, maybe I will go. Or if enough people ask, maybe I'll go do some like look at like Avatar and stuff a bit more. Um, so anyway, Harmonious Grove Strider, 3 generic, 2 green, creature beast, ward 2. This creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Beyond the borders of Pinnacle Space, alien worlds of untold wonder await. Ron Spencer. So this actually might not take place on Sothera. I'm not 100% sure. The flavor text makes it sound like it doesn't take place on Sothera. Um, because Sothera I think is Pinnacle Space, no. But I first assumed this might be like a Vendo somewhere, but because like the flavor could easily be like it gets more powerful the more lands thaw out, but I also the artist Ron Spencer. But it kind of seems like this is just hinting at the fact that there's there's a universe beyond Sothera. Like it's not just Sothera. There is an entire universe. Um the War 2 I think is just to represent green just sometimes has like resistance to magic, and Magic the Gathering has like flavor. And the idea is that it's like resisting like outside tampering or influence. So like if your opponent tries to like tamper with it, it's like that's not you're messing with the creature's like natural functions, so it kind of resists it. Um, I do love how this is built like almost like a brachiosaurus. But then you get to the head, it's just like a it just never actually gets a head. It's just like a face on like a neck or something on like a flap. There's like some sort of haze in the atmosphere that gives everything a greenish yellow tint. Um, I do think it's interesting that this one creature in the foreground is like its head is like kind of like accented by the moon behind it, almost like to emphasize a little bit. Oh, the moon is blending a little bit with like the background. Not that that's like a bad thing. It's like, but I do think there's like a little bit of frame here. There's like an obvious foreground, but nothing else. We can't really see anything else because everything else is just like clouds and green and pollen. Um, it's hard to tell like what even color this thing's actually supposed to be because like the green tint because you have to account for that for the green tint. Um, Kind of looks like it's probably just brown or something, maybe even bronze, but I'm not sure. Like these weird like halo stuff. I don't know. It's a very interesting scene going on here, and I do like how its neck is not just like a neck. It's got like these weird like ridges, like openings. Like it's just someone going like full alien on it. Um, so this might probably. I mean, this might not be in Sothera. So, well, I'm gonna get some more water real quick. This will take like a minute. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay. Hemosymbic might. I don't. I know like hemo like in terms of like hemoglobin like rich in the blood, but I'm not sure if this is symbic sounds like symbiotic or something. So like in I don't know why I ran up here. So maybe like in concert with something. I'm not 100% sure. Um, is Heosimic like an actual word? Sometimes you think something's like a made up Magic the Gathering word, and then you look it up and you're like, oh shit, that's an actual word. Also, I didn't know Might was. I forgot Might was a creature type. Hold on, I forgot Might was a. Do we have a lot of green Mites? We have two. We have two Mites. Um, I don't. Did they add Might? And I just didn't realize that Might was a new creature type. Like back in All Will Be One. Oh wow. Well, I'm accepting my green white Commander Might deck next set, Mark Rosewater. And if you don't, I blame it. I'm blaming it on you. Um, Hemosymbiotic Might. So, Might was probably chosen for a specific reason because I think like bed bugs are a type of Might or something, and other such like parasites. That's yeah. So bed bugs, they're both mites. So the idea of like a bed bug or something like of that sort feeding on you in some way. Hemosymbic mite, one green creature might. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets X plus X until the end of turn, where X is this creature's power. By stimulating violent behavior in its host, the mite scavenges the remains of prey much too large for it to hunt on its own. This is like a very interesting art is by Amanda Lee. So this is a very interesting take on like a sci-fi parasite where it basically hypes the host up and makes to make the host fight something that it otherwise wouldn't. So then that potentially leads to something dying, and then the mite can feed on whatever it kills. Um, so because the mite's very small itself, and it's reflected in the flavor where you can tap this creature and whenever this creature becomes tapped, it makes another creature you control get more power. Where X is this creature's power. The only funny part is that like I guess like flavor wise, you think of like force if it's the idea that makes things violent, so they attack more. It make it so like it's something it has to attack. Whenever you use it, which green does do, like green can sometimes have like that as like a drawback. But I guess they just want to be playable for a one for one. That'd be a little harsh for like a one green 1/1. Um, and obviously it only gives it +1/+1 normally because it's like it's just giving them like a little boost. But obviously if you put +1/+1 counters on this thing, it'll make whatever's attacking stronger. Is this creature like the? Is that any of the creatures we recognize? Is that like this could be like the um Frenzy Baloth? No, I don't know. Does Frenzy Baloth? The creature it's on has like both fur and scales though. Is like the weird thing. I don't know. The eye looks too weird. I mean, maybe the color's different because the symbiotic might, but I don't know. I don't know if we've seen the creature it's on. Um. Hmm. But anyway, so the art we see the creature that's on, but we're so zoomed into the creature that the idea is that this creature isn't really important. It's more so the effect that this creature's having on that creature. So we don't see the creature's entire face or reaction, but we know that this thing is biting down, leading to this like this energy pulsating into its veins. And we see the eye because the eye lets us know it's like a window to the soul, right? So we see the eye, so that way we have an idea of how the creature is feeling. And the creature looks like surprised or amped up or is feeling some sort of excitement. It's not like the creature's like sleepy or anything. There's not a whole lot going in the background. There's clearly some sort of ice. Like this is probably under some ice or something, like a cavern of ice. And then here we have the mite, which is obviously green with a bit of yellow for accents. And the creature's like brown. Notice how vibrant the mite is compared to the creature, so that way you can clearly see the mite and you know which one's the main character of this card. It's a very interesting design because I look at this, I'm like, is this thing supposed to roll up or something, or are these just like weird spines to make it harder to eat? Like if you're a predator trying to like eat this thing, the spines get in the way. I'm leaning towards the second one maybe because I don't really know why it would roll up backwards, like a reverse roly poly or something. Um, Obviously get the fangs to show they're sharp and piercing, blah blah blah. So whenever it becomes tapped, it bites onto something and amps it up. We're going to pump you up. I don't know if anyone knows the video I'm talking about, but if I had the time, I would absolutely do like a shit post like version of like Edge of Eternities, where it's just like every card's just a meme. That's what him symbiotic might reminds me of. I'm gonna post that actually. That's really funny. I'm also just gonna post. Part of the reason I'm posting that is just so I can remember to make a meme of that later. One day I need to get enough Vorthoses so we can make just like a ship, so we can edit together like a shit post compilation of like every plane. Ice Cave Crasher. Is it? You think that thing was on Ice Cave? Ice Cave Crasher is like yellow with like weird moth antenna. Anyway, Ice Cave Crasher, 3 generic, 1 in green, beast. So beast in Magic the Gathering isn't like a specific creature. It's just like any generic animal that you can't really identify as being like of like a cat or like a dog or something. Trample, Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature gets +1/+0 to the end of the turn. As one corrupt across a Vendo, many long dormant species grew bolder. Very interesting. So obviously, it's clearly like a lot of green in the card. Once again, we're seeing like an artist, Julia Metzger, who while some artists make the ice blue because that's how ice is often depicted in media, so you know it's ice and relate to water. They opt for clearly like a more turquoise or green, so that way you know it's ice. You could interpret this as like, oh, it's like jade or crystal or something, but it's very clear it's ice just by the way it's growing, and also because there's like weird like mist or vapor coming out of it. Um Despite being green, the creature itself is yellow and pink, which I think is mostly just because so we can like see it clearly and it doesn't blend in with the environment. Um It seems like it has some moth features. Like these are like moth antenna, like not like normal mammalian growths of any kind I can think of. Like if you look at this, wow, that's good. That's too much. That's too much. We don't need to do that. Like those are moth antenna it has. So this creature looks moth inspired and has got multiple legs like an insect potentially. Um, I think trample just because it's big, and landfall because because the flavor is that worms creeping across the vendo. So the flavor is that whenever something thaws out, whenever there's new lands being unfrozen, like forest growing or whatever, this thing gets more powerful or it becomes more active, which is represented by like the fact that like it grows bolder. So basically, it grows bolder in the sense that it gets +1/+0, and then you want to swing with it as it gets bigger, because you as a player are encouraged to be more bold with it as more lands enter the fray, under your control, of course. It's also kind of funny that you think they will ever get like. It's kind of funny there's no snowlands. I understand why, because like mechanically, just it's just too much to put all this stuff, and then also snowlands matter. Like, but I wonder like where we're gonna get like a commander set with like an Avendo deck that has like cares about like snowlands or something. But I guess the whole point of Avendo is that they're melting the snow. Like cow time isn't like the idea is not that they're melting the snow. They're like it's just there. Um, Ice Till Explorer, 2 generic, 2 green. Creature, Insect Scout. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. You may play lands from your graveyard. Whenever a land you control enters, mill a card. Come, join me in the sun. Warren Mai. 2 power, 4 toughness. So, once again, we get a green card that has like not as much green as you would think. There's still a lot of green as like an accent color. Oh my god. Fucking dying. Is ice still like an actual word again, or is that just like Magic the Gathering mumbo jumbo? Well, I know what ice is, but is there like a till word? Until catchers stir, prepare for a cult. So so I guess it's tills and cultivate, like ice till as an ice cultivator. Um, so clearly this person just like burned a hole in the ice and something's growing out of it. I don't know if the idea is that the same shot also invigorate the land while also melting a hole, or if they came across this hole. The hole looks fresh though, like there's like mist coming out of it. So it's the implication seems to be that this thing made the hole and then also might have encouraged the growth of these plants, or at the very least, it made the hole so the plants can grow. Because the idea is that they're a cultivator of some sort. Um. So once again, it's a green card, but there's like a lot of blue, just because it's the sky and the ice. And here we have this like whole acting as sort of a frame, so like we just hone in on this person and whatever they're doing. And once again, we have an example of another pink Eumedian, which once again, considering how wide and varied the Eumedians are, I have to assume there's Eumedians in basically every color. Color as in like appearance, not necessarily alignment. Although I imagine that might also be true given how wide and varied Eumedians can be. But this is an example of one of those more pink Eumedians. And then we see, and then outside the edge of like the drawing, we see the encroaching plants that are growing. Once again, definitely one of the more insectoid Eumedians, like their face, so it's kind of harder for them to read because they don't like they can't really emote in the same way that a human can, so it's hard to read it. But holy shit, hopefully I'm not dying. Hard to read the face, but it's clearly not like malicious. I don't think. I always like the Eumedian devices because they always have like the little like tubes and vents. Surprisingly, like a little bit less green. I mean, well, I guess like the Eumedians, like their personal equipment tends to be like not always as green as like their ships and stuff. Like the really big ships are like obviously more organic looking and stuff, but their armor sometimes looks green, but it's also definitely more like artificial looking. Like you look at this and you go, oh yeah, that's like metal or something, and not like some weird grown material. Um, I guess the flavor also implies that they're talking to the plants. So they're asking the plants to join them in the sun. You may play an additional land on each turn. So once again, the flavor could be that they're just growing more stuff. So you have more lands that you have access to. It could also be that they're helping thaw and terraform the land, so things terraform faster, so stuff gets unfrozen and you get access to it faster. Um, you may play lands from your graveyard, so I can think the idea is that they can just like recultivate the land and make it usable again as a mana source, and then mill. So mill in green usually just represents, so mill in blue and black represents like the idea of like erasing, like messing with your mind and hiding information, etc. In the case of green, it more so represents the natural cycle of like life and death, where stuff like is put into the graveyard, and like green is all about accepting what for as it is, and that includes accepting death as a natural part of it, and that things sometimes rot and decay and go to the graveyard, etc. As opposed to trying to fight that and make it not happen. Also, there's like another set of legs back here, which is like part of this thing. But it's very interesting that there's like another set of legs back here, even though it's a bit hard to see. Like the main focus is obviously this person kneeling down. Um, and once again, the emanating armor is kind of weird because even though I said it doesn't look as organic, it definitely feels like kind of weird in comparison to some of the other stuff on the edge because of the fact that it seems like it's like part of their body sometimes. Like this is like their chest, and then this is like a they probably have exoskeletons, I imagine. So maybe the idea is like it's like an add-on to their exoskeleton. I don't know. And there's like these vents. There's clearly like a conveyance of some sort of heat here because like there's like the smoking, some sort of smoke or steam. These vents like launching some sort of heat out, and then there's like mist and steam coming out of this ice. So there's clearly like a connection between like whatever this is happening in heat. So I imagine that this device is what burned a hole through the ice and is helping the stuff grow. Um, Intrepid Tenderfoot. One generic, one green. Creature insect citizen. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Activate only as a sorcery. Um Narix felt their molt coming. Before taking a new form, they defined what Evenda required of them. So I guess the implication may be that like sometimes whatever they molt into next is determined by either gene editing of some sort or whatever they just want. So I guess the idea is that you can put +1/+1 counters on it because the idea is that each time you do that, it molts into like a bigger, stronger form. And here, I actually thought it was a second person, but now I realize it's just a reflection. Like this is like the person now is like a potential form they could have in the future. Also the art's by Xavier Ribeiro. Um, it's a bit hard to tell the color a little bit because I feel like there's a green tint on some of this, and the lighting's a little bit weird. Not weird as in incorrect, just weird as in like strong. I think they're like a little bit more of like the pink emanations we've seen earlier, and this like definitely represents. Do we know? Do we have, like this definitely reminds me of like the commander we got of the emanating commander. Um, I don't think it's the same person because it's Zrael, but like it has like the same like vents like that kind of go down the body in a similar manner. Um, close that. Um, and the train passes this curtain of I guess to find something. I think this might be water here. It's hard to say what's going on in the background per se. Outside like mist and light. And then they're coming to like this more lush area. Like they're almost represents like a metaphorical transition. Where they're metaphorically coming from like one area to another into a new stage of their life. And even this was kind of like a pupa or like a bud or something that will then like unfurl and grow into this potentially. Um, so I guess the idea is that you just keep molting this over and over, and every time you molt, they get closer to this. They get stronger, more +1/+1 counters, etc. They also have like a bit of like leaf or foliage like on their body. I think I think it's like a something like they're wearing as like clothes, but also nice glow over here. Also very interesting that like the way this is like framed, like this person could easily be in the middle, it's like for the main focus, but the way it's framed, it's like split in between. Like these are like almost like it's like there's like some sort of balance almost between this and this. And like they hold equal weight in some ways, even though this is like obviously more faded and like not as physical as like the what's in the present right now. Um, and once again, everything seems like at an angle. Again, hard to tell if we're on a mountain or something, but like if you drew like a line here, like this is actually at an angle. It's not going like straight up like this, like you think it would. And there's like a the horizon's at an angle. But even then, like this is a kind of curving. But the point is like obviously there's like a bit of like action going on here. It's not completely stable. Like the world is kind of in flux or in action or in change in some sort of way. Larval Scout Lander. So once again, we see the ships have a recurring theme of they're all like borderless. The idea that the ships grant you like a one, it like highlights them as an important new card type in the set, but also the idea that ships give you a certain amount of freedom in the world of like the eternities that you would otherwise not have. Like with a ship, you can travel from planet to planet, which you cannot do just on foot. So in that way, I think that's reflective of the ships having a borderless here. Um, Larval Scoutlander, 2 generic, 1 green. Also, I have talked about the Eldrazi tend to also be borderless. I've talked about that a little bit, or the Eldrazi Titans at least. I don't know if that's true for all Eldrazi, but the idea that with the Eldrazi Titans and some of the other Eldrazi represents the idea that the Eldrazi are not constrained to the same limitations that other creatures are, and Planeswalkers tend to just kind of poke out of the images they're in, which represents their ability to planeswalk. Like they can leave the scene at any time the way people can't. Although in this case, it's kind of ironic though, because so I guess it is all Eldrazi that kind of have the borderless thing. But I guess it's kind of ironic because in this case, Tezzeret cannot just planeswalk out of here. It seems like he's kind of stuck on this plane, and and I was listening to like the Vorthos cast, and according to Lorelei, the Edge, Silas Jones is correct. Silas Jones is correct when he pointed this out. According to Lorelei, that the Edge is not a plane like a conventional plane, and as such, it seems like you can't just planeswalk in and out of it. Stuff gets launched from the multiverse into the Edge, and stuff from the Edge can enter the multiverse in certain specific ways, but it doesn't seem stable or consistent in any way. So, but anyway, the idea here is that borderless and ships represent like maybe the ships being able to fly around in a way that a normal person cannot. Like this thing cannot just like leave the planet all in the same way that a ship can. Um, Artifact Spacecraft. When this creature enters, you may sacrifice a land or lander. If you do, search your energy block. If you do, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield, tap, and shuffle. Flying. So it's actually kind of funny seeing like a green card with flying at 3 mana. I think the idea is that it's not a color pipe break because you have to pay the 3 and you have to spend 7. You have to tap for a total of 7 power to get this thing up and operational. Even then, it's only a 3/3. Usually green doesn't really get flying as like a color like mechanic, just as a weakness that's purposely built in. I couldn't really tell you like the philosophical reason as to why. I think it's mostly just mechanical, so all the colors have differences. I guess if you really wanted to like lean into it, it's like the idea that like green's all about like doing things like a certain way, and not trying to change things, and then like more of like a head-on approach in certain aspects. But I think it's a stretch because there are creatures that just fly naturally. So I think the idea is that mostly it's just a mechanical thing. So green can't just do everything. Um, so this is actually a kind of interesting art because the ship almost blends in with the background of the sky here, which is kind of an interesting choice. Um, but it gives you lands. It looks for you can sacrifice a land or a lander and then search your library for more lands. So that I think the idea is here is that it's a scout ship, so it's looking for more lands, and when it finds one, you can use it to draw mana from. Um, I don't know if this is supposed to be Evendo or if this is supposed to be like some other, because we know the E-Midians how they work is like the scout ships just drop them off on whatever planet, and once the planet becomes habitable, the E-Midians start like like their gene pods are activating, and they get up and start doing stuff. So they propagate via vast seed chips. This is not a seed chip though, is it? No, it's not. But they might also just be looking for larvae because we know they do that too because their larvae are like they don't all end in the same place. So, um, once again we have like the organic shapes of the ship, which by organic I mean smooth and while it is symmetrical, it's kind of irregular in some certain areas. Like it's not just like rectangles, it's not just like triangles. It's like very smooth, grown shapes. And these vents, we have like this thing being launched as a vent. I assume this is the lander. Although you sacrifice landers with this card, so but either way, it's launching some sort of lander down below or something. Um, Obviously they're very green, very turquoise. This is clearly this clearly like it's very interesting that they choose to put this at a point where like it's intersecting with like the horizon here, like it's almost like a crosshair. And they're very similar colors where even though this is brighter, it's like a very similar kind of like bluish green, which forms like a kind of crosshair. Is this like a planet or an asteroid? It's kind of like a plant. Could be another ship or something because there's like weird growth coming out of this ship too. But because this is like a horizon, so this planet, so it looks like they're like above a planet. So is this growing out from the planet into space? I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, and the art is by Javier Charo. I feel like a lot of this. I'm just thinking about this because I think a lot of this is really being brought to like the lander here. Like there's like yes, the ship is like the main focus. It's massive and the lights on it and it's glowing. But then you have like this basically what's like a crosshair, all this glowing light. It's just brighter around this. So a lot of emphasis being brought here. Lash Whip Predator, 4 generic, 2 green. Creature, plant, beast. This spell costs 2 generic, less to cast if your opponent controls 3 or more creatures. Reach. Oh, look at the size of those petals. That one's eaten well this season. Bez. Pinnacle Nature Surveyor. Um, so I guess the petals are its mouth, so of some sort. Well, mouth in quotes because it's a plant. So I don't know if it eats like a person. Uh, More so just like grab stuff to use as like fertilizer or whatever. But either way, ours by Brian Velez. Um, I almost thought this ice was a part of his body, but it's very clear when I look at it now that it's like just grabbing the ice, and the tail's like. So it's called Lash Whip. There's whips everywhere. Like these could all function as whips. A tail, limbs. Even these could function as lips, like in the whips in the mouth. Oh my god, trans died. Interesting as a plant beast though. It's a part plant, part beast. So maybe it does. Maybe it does eat like a an animal would. Um, Obviously a lot of green here, but like red for contrast. And honestly, the way it closes, like it looks like a flower, but if it closes, it looks like it might resemble like a fruit, almost. Which I mean, it would make sense for maybe carnivorous plants like draw things towards it. Like this almost reminds me of like an apple peel. So like if this like close, it might look like an apple or something similar. Um, I think the flavor is that like if there's a lot of there's a lot of potential prey, or if it's like aggressive. If there's like if there's a ton of creatures in this territory, you can cast it easier. It has reach because it has like a long whips to grab stuff out of the air. Um, so I think over there that's like plants way in the distance. That's like Evendo. That's like the equator where like the Eumedians are terraforming, and then the rest of this is like ice. There's like a bit of green here, which might be more foliage, but it could also just be like kind of like the lighting. Um, Obviously, you have the sky, which is blue for the contrast against like the green and the red and the yellow here. But some of the creature here, I guess that the idea is that it has reach, so it's showing you that it might prey on these things. Like this is not this creature seem very far away because the tint they are at, they're like tinted like the because like how the atmosphere tends to work is like the farther away things are, they kind of look a little bit more blue on Earth usually, and the reason for that is because there's basically more atmosphere between you and them, and you and whatever you're looking at. So that's why things tend to like look more bluer because the atmosphere, the sky's blue. So the farther away thing is, there's more blue tinted sky slash atmosphere between you and the target. Um, and this kind of almost conveys like this is almost like what it wants to prey on in a way, like because even though this is clearly like just like a foreshortening, like this is very far away. It looks like the way it's framed, it's like the way it's framed, it's almost like this is like what's like it's almost like they're in its grasp in a certain way, which makes me wonder like is this like a creature like this thing preys on, especially since the flavor text says it ate well, stuff like that. Also, bigger toughness though, despite being so I guess that might also convey it's more like a ambush predator of some sort. Although I might be reading too much into the flavor, the power and toughness there. I might need to take my dog out soon. Loading zone. 3 generic, 1 green. Enchantment. If one or more counters would be put on a creature, spacecraft, or planet you control, twice how many of each counters are of those kinds. If one or more counters would be put on a creature, spacecraft, or planet you control, twice that many of each of those kinds of counters would be are put on there instead. Matt Stewart is the artist. Warp. So I definitely like warp. Warp here is definitely a bit more clear because a loading zone. So I think it represents like things warping in and out of the loading zone, which is a bit clearer in terms of flavor. Um, Obviously, just cares about obviously like creatures, spacecraft, planets, are all things that can like have to do with loading zones. Like a loading zone could be on a planet. Spacecrafts go to loading zones and leave loading zones and they also bring creatures and stuff. Green does have the ability to like increase the amount of counters on things. That usually just represents just growth. I think the idea of green, like emphasizing what's already there, making it grow better, cultivating the land, etc. Um, Once again, we don't really have a main character here. This is like very deliberate because we can barely see this person's face. No one's actually looking towards the camera in any way. Everyone else is like looking away or so far away you cannot see their face anyway. So it's very clear that the main focus, the main character, so to speak, is actually the scene itself, and not like any individual Eumedian in this frame. Um, we also have like purple in here. I mean, it's a green card, but we have purple here and green here, which I think is just for contrast. Um, so the purple represents like the station, and then green represents like the oncoming ships and stuff. I think this is a Vendo still because I think this is like the around the equator area, so there's just a lot more like less ice stuff. This could be clouds, but it could also be ice. I think it's clouds because I think it's just really high up because the horizon's like bending in a way that implies like it's the planet's it's how the planet because the planet's spherical, so obviously the higher you go, eventually the ground will look like it's bending on either side. I also just think it's a very cute scene. I love like all the little guys pulling all the stuff here, making all the stuff work. All the people getting off the ship, getting on the ship, etc. And once again, a lot of stuff seems organic in certain ways. So I wouldn't be surprised if like some of the bigger structures, like their ships and stuff, was actually like somehow grown, or like the hull was grown and then something was built inside of it. But who's to say? So obviously, if you have a loading zone, you get more counters and stuff because the idea is that there's more stuff to drop off. There's more cargo. Melt Strider Eulogist. So this is not the first time we've seen a Melt Strider. I've seen the Melt Strider. Do we have like a definition of what a Melt Strider is specifically? We can assume that a Melt Strider is just someone who like basically goes into the ice and melts stuff. But yeah, we don't have a definition of what a Melt Strider is in Magic. But I assume the Melt Striders are just people who go out and help melt the ice, basically. Melt Strider Eulogist. What's a Eulogist? A person who praises someone or something. Person who give a person who praises someone or something highly in speech or writing, especially someone who gives a tribute or a funeral. So okay, so this thing dies, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Okay, so it is going with like the funeral thing because the idea is that it rewards you for things dying. A Melt Strider Eulogist, 2 generic, 1 green. Creature Insect Soldier. Whenever a creature you control dies with a +1/+1, whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. There are no failures in Terra Symbiosis, only lessons learned. So I guess the idea is that like this person's that the flavor here is that whenever something dies, you basically take what was useful, the +1/+1 counters off of it, and then use it to draw a card or learn a new lesson. So there's like this idea generally, I think, that like, oh, black is like death and undead and destruction, which is kind of true in certain ways, and then like green is like, oh, green and white are life and growth. And I think that is true to an extent, but it's important to remember that green philosophically is about accepting the way things are, which includes accepting death as a natural part of like the world. So that's why sometimes you have green cards that care about things dying. It's like the idea that green's about accepting that there is like a food chain, that things will die, things age, things get eaten, etc., etc. And here we have this person's obviously the main character. Not to say about this Emedian I haven't said about other Emedians. I'm gonna try to like maybe not repeat myself as often, but like obviously like this armor, the armor is interesting here because it almost feels like it's almost like a part of them in certain ways. They have a more humanoid face, so we can see the expression more clearer. Clearer. Wow. There's a bunch of dead stuff in the background, so you know that this creature wants things to die. It wants you to recreate the scene by killing everything around it. Clearly the foreground, because everything in the background's has like a green tint to it, and the farther away it is in the background, the more of a green tint it has. Along with the smoke and stuff to show like some sort of devastation. Kind of weird that they have these swords because they look almost like normal swords, even though that like they're wearing like a sci-fi stuff. It could be like a super sci-fi like material sword, but we've seen like a lot of weird beam swords and stuff, so kind of just surprised there isn't like a weird beam sword or something or a gun. Artist is Jason A. Engel. Engle. So yeah, the idea is here. The idea is that like it's a eulogist. It's giving some sort of eulogy. The idea is that like it seems like the implication that Emetians just generally like even outside this card just don't put anything to waste. Like if stuff is destroyed, they can use it for like biomass or something, or to feed the land, and just thus like enhance the cycle of growth in a certain way. Um, Interesting that the eyes are also blue, just because I think it's just striking. It helps you draw attention to the eyes. Yeah. We're getting a lot of Milk cards in a row. Anyway, I know it's in alphabetical order, but Milk gear, 1 green, artifact equipment. When this equipment enters, attach it to a target creature you control. Creature gets +2/+1 has reach. Equip 5. Milk are the bleeding edge of Evendo's Frontier Thaw. So this gives us a better idea what a Milk is. Also, art is by Camille, Kamal, Camille, Alawir. So this gives us a better idea of what the Milk Shredders do, as they help all the ice. It seems like they're kind of like the front line of the ice thawing. It's kind of weird to say that like there's a front line of melting ice, but you got to remember there's a bunch of creatures like that just emerge out of the ice suddenly, of ice that's being melted. I don't think there's really like a mechanical reason as to why the equipment automatically attaches to something, other than the fact that it's a mechanical thing. Because they've been doing this lately, where they've been trying to make auras and equipment just like more convenient to use, because having to cast this thing and have it into the battlefield and pay an equip cross can be a little much. But they've been trying to like basically like make it a little bit more flexible to use in certain areas by making it so you don't have to equip it like the first time. Like it comes in and equips, but the equip cost is greater overall. So it immediately attaches to something, immediately starts doing something, and then you can re-equip it if you have the mana. Um, I can't really think of why it's per se has reach. Like other than the fact that maybe it's just like a projectile. I don't know. Like it's like a big beam, so it might be able to hit things far away, or maybe it has like some sort of way to help climb. But it kind of looks like just like the giant cannon. Yeah, I'm talking. Oh, thank you. It kind of just looks like it could just be a beam projectile that could hit things from far away. I'm not 100% sure. I understand why the person in the art has reach, but yeah. But anyway, so this clearly once again we have the emphasis like on like heat. Um, so red is often associated with fire Magic the Gathering because like the idea of heat and emotion, and associating heat because like my blood is boiling means I'm feeling very strong like emotion, in this case anger. So but it's very clear trying to make sure that you don't think this is a red card, because even though it's like fire and heat, it's like a yellowish green, and it's not like, and it's mostly heat unless like the fire just shooting out in every direction. Um Once again, it kind of has organic shapes, but it's clearly like metal and not some sort of like potentially like organic material. Once again, we are seeing like some of the vents are similar to the one we saw in the commander. And once again, we have a pink emitting, except this one has like blue splotches, which is like new. But again, unsurprising. Um, the environment's pretty interesting because it seems like it's almost done in a different style. Like it feels like a lot more rough in certain areas, like it's almost like pastel or something. Where everything else seems like a lot more solid and obvious, which I think is just draw attention to it. Um, and these are clearly like some sort of plant growing in this direction. Oh, frontier is that a pun? Like frontier law? It's frontier thaw. Melstride's resolve. Um, 1 green. Enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. When this aura enters, enchanted creature fights up to one target creature an opponent controls. Enchanted creature gets +0/+2 and can't be blocked by more than one creature. Um, so we do see some of the Melstriders or the thaw. I think they're called thermal wands. They're mentioned as being like thermal wands or something, which they use to, like melt an area like this. Kind of weird that like it has a fighting effect, even though you would think that it'd show the fighting on the card maybe a bit. Also, I just love the fucking shading here, like the almost like comic book s like dark, like stark, almost black shading. Although it might be a little bit more like just like really dark gray, but there's like aura farming. So clearly, like using like this wand to melt the things around them. A bit weird because like usually when a card like makes things fight, it depicts the fight happening. But I guess you could see this as being aimed at something or someone that's just not in frame. Um, so I mean, green cares about fighting because the idea is that it's like using what your mama gave you, which is just like your fist, like fighting with tooth and claw, like resorting to like natural instinct and what you have. Um, and enchant creature like so sometimes green makes it so you can't be blocked by more than one creature, like a reverse menace almost, where you need to block with one creature. Part of it is because I think it's because green just has like a bigger creatures. It's just more to green's advantage. It's like playing the green's like an advantage. It's just like green's more likely to have bigger creatures. So if you have like someone who's playing white and you force them to block with one creature at a time, you might have trample, which might not be optimal. Um, but it could also be the idea that green like philosophically like almost like a natural way, like no outside influence, no double teaming, just like me versus you, who's stronger, let's go, kind of thing. The art here is like incredible. It's very vibrant, actually. It's very interesting that this person in the picture is like the only one with this kind of like shadow. It looks like. The other one's like more like standard, like kind of like almost realistic shading. But I think it's done on purpose, like draw attention to this person. Um, and here we see like almost like a path being created by like the thermal wand, which again might imply that even though it's like melting everything around them, the ice I mean, not just like literally everything, that might be like have a certain direction or thing it's being pointed at. Um, Carlos Palma Cujaga. So I mean, like I said earlier, the flavor's a bit weird when you think about it because like I'm not really sure what fight's happening, but I mean it's like whatever. Sometimes things gotta work for mechanics. And once again, we have like a slanted horizon, which could be just they're on a mountain or a hill, but it could also be like the idea of like action or instability or things being changed. In this case, like the ice being melted, and the greenish yellow, and then a different shade of green, blah blah, blue sky. So there's really some sort of background here, but the foreground's like definitely more color, but the background's kind of like all green and blue. And I do like how even the clouds are kind of like being pushed away. They're not literally being pushed away, but like sometimes you see people play around with like kind of like perception in art a little bit, like with foreshortening and stuff. So it looks like this person's like they're almost like they're so powerful that they're having influence over nature and even like the sky, even though it's like not literal. But yeah, might form harmonizer. So two generic, two green, creature, insect, druid. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, double the power of target creature you control until end of turn. Warp, two generic, two green. I think the warp is just once again a creature having access to a ship or something. Um, so I think so. We see it clearly that there's some sort of growth, like plant matter or growth being wrapped around this person to boost their strength. So I guess the idea is that it's landfall. You play land, and they can use whatever like plants or whatever is on the land to boost themselves, and they're harmonizers, so they're working with the land. And once again, we have a bit of like maybe like the e-mini perspective of like what they're doing as being natural or organic is like they're harmonizing with the land and not fighting against it. Even though we might see it as like, oh, it's an artificial process, they're changing the land, they might see it as, oh, we're harmonizing with the land, we're helping it grow. Um, Once again, they get the Sazrael type commander, e-medium commander type like vent thing going on. Um, this creature also their armor looks bulkier, which is probably on purpose because it's the idea is that it can get something get bigger and stronger. I don't. Is that another E Midian? I can't really. What is this? Like right here? Is this like a device or an E Midian? I want to say that's a device. Um. So once again, we're playing around a bit with height and perspective, where we're looking up at this character, right? So this character is at their most powerful, or at a point where they're growing in power, because we're looking up at them and they're like metaphorically growing, and this is represented by like all these plants and stuff also growing up, like reaching towards them, growing upward, and we're down here looking up at them. And obviously you have like these plants in the background that are also pointing up, which helps us let us know that like, oh, this person that they're powerful, they're confident. Sorry for like all the coughing. I think I'm still might be a little sick. And they're etc. Also, once again, a lot of green because it's a green card. Bartek Fedexok. Oroboroid. 2 generic, 2 green. So immediately sounds like Ouroboros, which is like the snake eating its own tail. But creature plant worm. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X+1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is this creature's power. I found a strange vine on the ice, thawing for further analysis. Melstrider log final entry. So yeah, Melstrider seems like they have it tough. It seems like they're the persons you send out. Like they're either like one of the first or just the first people you send out to go melt the ice, and then they're followed up by everyone else who's like terraforming everything. Um, so I love how incredibly long this thing is. Like it's so long that it's like going from here to here to here to here. Like you can't even tell like where the end really is. And it's just looping around here. Um, I do like how like the what would be its quote unquote mouth is like red if you have a ship flying by, which is kind of like, I think for scale a little bit to show how big this thing is. Something else here. I don't know if that's like another Ouroboros or to show that it like grows. Um, very obviously like this thing is so massive that you can see like the curve of the planet here. So it's clearly like very massive, very big. Ice here. I don't really know what's going on in the background here. Like there's like this trail of this might just be ether or some weird space dust, just like this trail of stuff going into who knows where. Um, there's clearly like a bit of atmosphere here, like so blue. Once again, red and green are actually like complementary colors, so interesting choice with that. I can't tell this is an E-median ship or not. It's just so small. I can't really like. It looks like it could be E-median shape because we know they kind of like if you look at like the sledge ship or whatever. Like I could see like this. I could see it being vaguely shaped like that, but it's kind of hard to tell. I can't really see the colors very clearly. Um, like the thruster's kind of a weird color because I think the E-medians usually have like blue or green thrusters, but I don't know. I think the flavor here is that this thing just keeps growing and growing and puts +1/+1 counters on everything. It just gets bigger. And ours by Samuel Perrin. Pull to the left. 3 generic, 2 green. So here we have the Drix, a Drix member, and as we know, Drix can West walk naturally. I might need to go pee. I'm gonna be honest. I might need to go pee now and then finish talking about this in a second. I mean, my throat's been like really dry. I've been drinking so much water, man. Okay, give me 1 second. Here's some lo-fi vaporwave. Okay, I'm back. Also, I have food. Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, yes. Also, kind of weird that I don't think we have a single blue Drix, but we do have Drix referenced in blue cards, which makes you assume that Drix are in every color. We just didn't get a blue Drix in this set. I was like, Weft Walking is blue. Weft Walking is blue, even though we don't have a blue Drix in this set. Um, were there like no Drix in the commander sets or anything? Whatever. But I assume the idea is that Drix are in every color. And we have Avatar, Axe of our Fate Thief, which I think we did read about. I didn't realize he was black red. Anyway, so the Drix are basically the only known sentient creature sentient creature that we know of that can naturally Weft Walk without the need of a machine. We know cats can Weft Walk naturally within the Edge, but obviously they can't talk with you per se. So basically the Pinnacle was spreading out, like, spreading its influence, and they came across the Drix. I might need to take my dog out in a second. They're coming across the Drix. And they come across the Drix, and the Drix like, okay, here's what's gonna happen, right? We can teach you how to perform faster than light travel with Weft travel, but as a but you have to do some sort of but you have to promise, you have to make some sort of deal with us. We don't really know what the exact details of that deal are, but we can assume that, considering that the Drix are all about like hunting down Eldrazi stuff and certain like those really old artifacts that might be dangerous for just random people to have. The deal is either the Pinnacle either supplies them with resources, and or the Pinnacle basically like holds on to those things for them. Sorry, I'm taking a bite of my. I want to start taking bites of my food because I'm kind of hungry. So I couldn't really tell you what pulled through the Weft in particular is green any more than Weft Walking is blue. I don't really know. It's probably just mechanical. But return up to 3 generic, 2 green. Return up to 2 target landline permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Then return up to 2 target land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That which shouldn't have happened is undone, and a new pattern takes its place. Also, by the way, we know what you can Weft Walk through time sometimes. Although I think it's really weird and very dangerous. So the card could be green because the idea is that maybe they're correcting something by pulling it through the Weft, and returning to it to its like proper state, so it's not like artificially influenced. So I guess the idea is that you can return cards. The idea is that it's like, because we know Weft Walking can be used to like fuck with time in certain ways. So the idea might be that you're saving something or you're putting something through the Weft. It could either be in the graveyard or it could just be somewhere far away that's basically in your graveyard. And you can maybe the idea is you could also be Weft Walking to a new place, or you're saving some place. I don't know. Time travel's just, the Edge of Eternities has time travel, but it's very weird because we know that it all leads to like one timeline. And the present can be changed, I think, in certain ways, but the past or certain things can't in certain ways. So I don't know. Ours was Andrew Marr. I do absolutely adore this art though. I love like how it's like showing like all these different places. That could be Cameron, I can't really tell, but all these different places throughout either time and or space. And I love how they're all like different colors and like different slices, like there's slices of stuff. And it just really shows that like, how big the universe is and like what the power Weft Walking gets you. And I also love how like this thing is being split across almost like a air current stream by like this Drix, like their presence is like what's causing like this warp in space. Like things are being like cut, they're flowing around the Drix, etc., etc. Once again, the dress have like the weird fabrics that's like almost like weird filigree, but like maybe like leather filigree, weird stuff. Um, stuff like that. Once again, I think we have each color represented. We have like yellow for white, green, mostly green, obviously, purple for black, uh, blue for blue, and a little bit of red for red. Because Magic loves doing like color, like 5 color pairs and stuff. I mean, 5 color. Uh, I forget the word for it, but 5 color groupings of stuff just to allude to each color. Sammy's Curiosity. 1 green. Sorcery. You gain 2 life. Create a lander token. Tanick's gut warned of danger, but Sammy forged ahead without heed. So I don't remember this exactly happening in the story, but it's close enough. Sammy finding the... Oh, Sammy looks kind of weird in this art. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they're facing away from us. But Sammy coming across the... Is it the End Stone? Is that what they called it in the story? Sorry, it's been a second. I think it's the End Stone. That might be related to the Var in some way. And the Var are basically like a really old now extinct species. They're like your forerunners or whatever. In sci-fi, you gotta have that's in Star Wars. I mean, in sci-fi, you gotta have like some species that was really old and used to rule the galaxy, but is no longer around or whatever. And here we have tennis claws or whatever. Obviously, this card leans a lot more like green. Sam usually has like a red and white, red color palette because they're red white. But here they're kind of like off color purposely so because it's a green card and there's like a lot of green light everywhere. Um, I'm not really sure what the green light represents. I mean, the green alignment represents particularly, other than like maybe Sammy following some sort of natural instinct in this moment. Even though Sammy's usually red and red white, I guess green is between red and white, so there's that too. So here the art's obviously the End Stone. Sammy reaching out to show some sort of curiosity or being mesmerized by this, and then Tunic on guard, like Tunic's like, this is a bad idea, boss. Stars by Tuan Duong Chu. Um, Tuan Duan. I'm trying to see if I can pronounce that correctly. But sorry, I'm eating. Oh, the insert's crackling with power. And it has like these weird like waves around, like it's like almost like either gravitational waves or maybe magnetic waves. I'm not really sure, but very green, very interesting. The background's like, I guess, in the mind of the asteroid. I think is the best look of the asteroid mine they're investigating in the story that we have. Kind of like his bluish tint, I think, just to separate them from like all the green and other colored stuff going on here. Seedship Agrarian. I assume agrarians need to do with agriculture, I presume. Relating to cultivating the land or cultivation of land. So we're also getting a strong like cultivation theme here. Green just kind of has this a lot because the idea of like cultivating nature, and helping it, but also I guess the idea that Emetians are terraforming, so they are cultivators. Very detailed art compared to some of the other Emetians we saw. Like we see like little like, bits of like their exoskeleton or whatever. Seedship Agrarian. 3 generic, 1 green. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, create a lander token. Landfall. Whenever land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Knowledge isn't found, but grow. A very interesting like combo here where it's like it creates lander tokens whenever it's tapped, and then you can sacrifice those lander tokens to search for land, which will activate this and put a +1/+1 counter on it. I guess the idea is that whenever, since an agrarian is cultivating the land, is that whenever land's played, it cultivates the land and draws power from it and resource, so it gets a +1/+1 counter. Knowledge isn't found but grown is pretty interesting because I guess like the idea is that blue does believe in like creating knowledge to a certain extent, but also like blue believes that like basically everything exists that you need basically that everything kind of exists and everything can be understood in a certain way. So it's kind of interesting. Like maybe green take on it is just that like you can't find anything. You just gotta like find it within yourself, bro. You just gotta practice it and it'll come to you. Once again, I look like little tubings here. Definitely less organic, but still seems like it could be like a part of the body. Vents. I assume it's like a pinkish Eomedian, could be sort of orange. It's hard to tell because of the lighting, but I think it's pink. And there's clearly doing something here. I'm not really 100% sure what they're actually doing with this thing. This might be ice they're breaking. I'm not 100% sure. It looks kind of weird though. And once again, one of the more humanoid faces, we can tell. I think they have a tool in their mouth too, which is kind of like a nice detail. They have like a tool in their mouth. Once again, we have a more humanoid Emetian, so we can see, so we can have a clear look at their face, so clearly focused. You can tell this is like the foreground, because the background all has like this green tint on it, sort of, and the foreground has like less of that, little to no. It's kind of like a little bit on the shy and the shading a little bit. By Helge C. Balzer. Well, it is a seed ship agrarian, so maybe they're working on a seed ship. Also, we know the seed ship is what drops the Emetians off on whatever planet they are. So, now thinking about it, the vents make a lot of sense because you know how much the Emetians seem to use heat to melt stuff on Evendo. So, well, I'm eating real quick. Seed ship impact. One generic, one green. Instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value is 2 or less, create a lander token. A new brood finds its home on the doorstep of another's. So once again, I have to wonder: is this could be somewhere outside of Sothera? Because I don't. So it could be something that happened in the past, where like maybe the Evendo E-minis were already set up, and then another one landed, and then it kind of just merged. But this could also take place outside of Sothera, or something, because we know the E-midians just use seed chips in general to like to disperse themselves across the cosmos to different planets. Obviously, the impact obviously destroys an artifact or enchantment. If it's 2 or less, like you get the lander tokens. The idea is that they're landing here, discovering a new land. They're setting up Emetian stuff, etc. I do love how colorful this all is. Because this does not look like does not look like a Vendo, I guess. So the Vendo's like more ice and or greenery, and this looks like weird like rainbow stuff. So I want to presume this is a different planet, but I could be wrong. Um, Constantine Marin is the artist, and here we have like obviously the main focus. There's no people, so the main focus is this giant seed ship. You got a massive crater to show the impact. But the crater doesn't just have like normal molten material or lava. It's like this weird like rainbow cosmic looking stuff. So I'm not really sure where they are per se. But where everything else is kind of like this like rainbow cosmic stuff, it's like there's like a ring around the ship, so you clearly see the ship, and then some of the stuff inside, which is like still colorful, but like less colorful than this, just so you, for a bit of clarity. I like how it's instant, like it could happen at any moment. Shattered Wings. So Shattered Wings is a classic Magic the Gathering card at this point. Or no, I'm thinking of Broken Wings. Never mind. But let's be honest, it's just Broken Wings is simply like a Surveil stapled on. Like, come on. So Shattered Wings, 2 generic, 1 green. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Surveil 1. The immediate have to keep Evendo at Gentle World at any cost. On one hand, you can see that as being like a contradiction. Like they want to keep it gentle even if they have to fight. But then again, you understand what like the paradox of tolerance is, and the whole saying like if you have a chicken and wolf coop, you're just gonna have a wolf coop. Like yeah, the Monoliths and Palatine are clearly extremists, so I can understand not wanting them around, especially if they're gonna be fighting over shit. Um, Obviously the flavors that is destroying a ship, artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying you can surveil. So very useful in a set with a bunch of spaceships running around. This could be a ship, but also it's kind of like a turret or a mortar or something that like of that line, like a thing of that something along the line that just shoots things that fly by. I do love like how this stuff is like kind of spreading outwards from this, so like your attention is drawn to this thing because everything's like spreading out from it. There's also like this, which is randomly like glow, has like glow to it. I don't know why. It's weird, but there's like a glow back here too. So I guess the idea is that like maybe it's like some sort of combat or conflict happening leads like fire. Um, I do like how the ship does have like a sort of shield or gravity or something. Like it's trying to protect itself by still getting blown up. Um, or maybe it is getting blown up, but it's being protected. I don't know, but very interesting. Um, Obviously this is like such a weird projectile because it looks like it kind of like curves up and then starts tracking this thing and then hits it. So obviously not a normal projectile. It's not just firing straight and then hitting something. Um, Although this is like weirdly spherical for something Eumedian. Like this is like a different color you think is monoist. Like the Eumedians do have like smooth shapes, but it's usually like not just spheres and stuff, I suppose. Although again, that's not me complaining. It's me just like curious as to what decisions are being made and why. Um, so Sergei Glushikov. You could also see this as like some sort of mirror. It's somehow mirroring each other somehow. Like maybe some sort of conflict that leads into to them mirroring each other, picking up certain habits from each other. I don't really know, but yeah. Sky Singer. Oh, this one did some work in one of my drafts. Sky Singer. 2 generic, 1 green. Creature Insect Warrior. Reach. Whenever this creature blocks a creature with flying, this creature gets +5 and +0 until the end of the turn. Meaning thermal ones protect their new home as well as thought. So once again, I was talking about thermal wands earlier. Here we see explicitly named a thermal wand. And so I guess the idea is that some of the Maelstrider stuff that has reach is the idea that the thermal wands can just shoot really, really far. Um, so I guess this gives you reach because they can just shoot very far. And they can act as makeshift weapons, it seems like. And once again, we have like an emphasis on sort of the heat happening, but not as much emphasis on like fire, just to avoid looking like a red card. And there's like a beam just firing up. We do have like a very interesting like kind of like when I look at this art, I see kind of like a circular thing going on where like the clouds are kind of circled around here, and everything's kind of built to like circle around this one point, so that way it helps draw emphasis to the one point, but also gives like a sense of power where it's like yes, this is not literally what's pushing the clouds. The clouds are just happen to be in that shape, but it gives like the impression or illusion that this is what's happening, which helps emphasize this as like a point of power and like influence. Um, we're almost done. I'll take my dog out of this thing. We're almost done. There should be other people downstairs who'll take them out, but I think I just gotta speed up a little bit. So once again, a lot of blue. The foreground has like a slight blue tint to it, and as you get closer to the background has a slight blue tint to it. As you get closer to the foreground, it's not. It's also like less ice too, to show like the warming effects of the thermal wand. Ours is Carlos Palma Kruchika. Sledge Sledge class siege ship. 2 generic, 1 green. Artifact spacecraft. Station. Flying. Whenever this creature attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So I think the flavor here is that, well, it's flying, it's a spaceship, and the idea is that as it attacks, you're just dropping off guys to fuck people up. Once again, green card with flying. I don't think it's like a flavor reason that green doesn't have flying a lot. I gotta slow down. I don't. So once again, a green card with flying. I don't think there's a reason that green doesn't get flying a lot, other than it's just a purely mechanical thing. So that green isn't just good at everything. And also be really fucking annoying because green gets big creatures. So it gets like the biggest creatures, and if it just had flying that easily, it'd just be really fucking annoying. Um, Once again with the Portalus. I hope that was thunder. Once again, borderless to show like the ships can to draw attention to the ships and also show that they can go places where a normal person on foot cannot. Not a lot to say about the ships. Once again, we have the organic like shapes, like almost like it could have been grown or shape or encouraged to grow a certain way, and then like these sort of vents with blue energy coming out. And we see, I guess, other ships for reference. Art by Leon Tucker. Also green, because green alignment. Tapestry Warden. So I remember this card. This card is like one of the cards that's like dug into my memory, because I remember we saw this card way fucking back when Magic the Gathering first announced, like, oh, we're making a sci-fi set or a science fantasy set. I think it was a couple of years ago at this point, right? it feels like almost yesterday. It's kind of crazy that like oh yeah, we're making a science fantasy. I remember like holy shit, it's time. Um, Tapestry Warden, 3 generic, 1 green. Artifact creature, robot soldier. Vigilance. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than power. Ugh, okay, so it uses toughness rather than power. Sorry, I was saying I was thinking about it, not because I'm annoyed. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power stations permanents using its toughness rather than power. Drix never leave the worlds defenseless. 3/3. It's a 3/4. Andreas Zephiratos. So this tapestry ward is somehow related to the Drix, and they use like worlds to defend it. I mean, somehow related to the Drix. They use it to defend this world, and that actually makes a lot of sense because the weird striations here could resemble Eomidian striations on like their ships and stuff, but it also resembles like some of the stuff that the Drix have on their clothes. Like the Drix also have like these weird striations on their clothes, so that makes sense that it's related to the Drix somehow. Um, it looks like it's probably fighting Monoliths. I'm not 100% sure. This could be just generic purple energy, pink energy people, but the Monoliths use a lot of like purple projectiles and pink projectiles. Um, it seems like what it's using is some sort of ferrofluid. If you don't know what a ferrofluid looks like, it usually looks like kind of like this, which is basically like a magnetic liquid that can then be shaped by. And because it's magnetic, the idea is that you can shape it and stuff. And some get really weird because you can also have like liquids that like when they're put under pressure or hit by certain things, they become more solid. So there's that. Um, I think the idea of toughness is just well, one, it's just something mechanically interesting. If you want to play like a toughness matters deck, I suppose you could do that. But I guess the idea is also that emphasizing that you want to play defensive, that it rewards you for having big toughness. Um, Also, there's like a canister with like some of the ferro fluid in the back, so that's where the fluid's coming from. Is this weird canister back here? Um, and it looks like it's being sent to all over its body, not just the shield. I can't really tell you why green has vigilance in particular, I can't really tell you why green has vigilance in particular, other than the fact that green just has a lot of keywords on its creatures because green cares about creatures the most. Um, in white, vigilance usually represents like a sort of like defensiveness, like you can swing and then still defend. White wants to protect you and other people. So it could be similar flavor with the specific card, I suppose, where it's like it wants to protect. So the idea is that you can swing in and still have enough to defend yourself and protect people, and the hypothetical world. A lot of silver because it wants to let you know it's an artifact, but still a lot of green too because it's a green creature. The black is just because I think it's a ferrofluid. It's a magnetic fluid. I think it's supposed to let you know it's a ferrofluid, which I think could probably pull up a picture of a ferrofluid. And as you get closer to the background, like the background's more like tinted green, and as you get closer, it gets less tinted green, but still very green. Yeah. So here's what I mean, like a ferrofluid, a magnetic liquid. Do you guys have a good picture? Like stuff like this. So this is why I'm saying I think it's a ferrofluid. So anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Terra symbiosis. Um, so yeah, Terra means Earth, and symbiosis is like working with something. So once again, I think we're getting a bit of the Eomidian perspective of the idea that they're working in harmony with nature, not against it. I do love like how this is like kind of ice and like this. So this is thawing, right? And this is like ice and it's melting, and then here we have like this fire, like because we know that they're all about thawing and melting the ice of the of Evendo. So like this metaphorical like fires represent them like blazing a trail of both like the terraformation, but also like melting the ice is pretty interesting. Whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters, Terra Symbiosis, 2 generic, 1 green. Whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, you may draw that many cards. This only once each turn. For E-Medians, terraforming and evolution are one and the same. They grow as their planet grows in lockstep and coexistence. So once again, this is what I'm talking about when I say that E-Medians do make sense as a green faction, despite what some people may think, is that they see it as basically like a natural evolution. Like in the same way like a beaver builds a dam, or things just naturally change and evolve. It's like they see the world as naturally evolving. It's important to point out that like green is sometimes thought of it's easy to read green as like green is against all change, right? It's easy to look at green and go like, oh, green just hates change. Green never wants to change. Green is fine with change. It just has to be natural and like naturally occurring change, and like not forcing or artificially changing things to be something that they are not. Um, so the E-Medians view the change as like a natural change. And obviously the idea is that when you put +1/+1 counters on it, you're basically like sort of like modifying your creatures, which is kind of like you know, changing it in a certain way that lets you draw a card because you get information from that. But it only happens once each turn because it's only three mana, and that would be broken if it was multiple times a turn. I do love this art. It definitely reminds me like almost like an old propaganda poster in a way. It's like you you can be one of us, and it's like you can be a Melt Strider too, and help blaze a trail for the Eomidians. Obviously we have like different ships up here. Whoops. Once again, more organic shaped ships. The sky's yellow and orange, which helps contrast against the like, there's not a ton of colors happening here. And not like in a critique way, but like in a very like purposely stylistic way, where it's like green, blue, and orange for the most part, and like a bit of yellow. So there's like a lot being done with like a very few, like a small handful of colors. Like it's not super everywhere or like rainbow, but it's like it gets the point across very, very well, which just I think speaks to like the effectiveness of the artist to be able to convey like so much happening with like a limited color palette, or I guess maybe more like a symbolic color palette, I suppose, as opposed to like what's literally like what color things would literally be. So yeah, Vico Menzes. Have we seen other Vico Menzes stuff? Angel of Ruin. Man, that was a great Assault Dominator. So they've been working since at least New Capenna, if not longer. I'm not an expert like on like how long the artists have been working for Magic. Oh, so they did some stuff on All Will Be One too, and Capenna. So last one for today, Thawbringer. 2 generic, 1 green. Creature Insect Scout. When this creature dies or enters or dies, surveil 1. So once again, we have a bit of a reference to green accepting like the natural cycle of life and death, and how death basically like feeds new life, but also the E-Median specifically, and how like they reuse the dead, and the dead do not go to waste. We are as ice, their mentor once told them, destined to shatter rigid form and nourish the grounds with our melting. So yeah, which is like in the flavor text right here. It's like we are like ice. Once we melt, we are consumed by the world or whatever whatever needs our sustenance to grow. Once again, we have like a thermal wand, except this one looks like it's usually like except this one looks like it's more being used for just to produce light, mostly as opposed to heat, like they're exploring something. Once again, the horizon feels like kind of like an angle potentially. It's a bit hard to tell because of the fog, but it feels like it could be like this, which helps like a bit of action or like wariness in this case, where it's like not stable and grounded. Arts by Oliver Bernard. I don't have a ton to say because like as you get closer, it becomes like there's like this weird like blue. No, I keep saying weird like it's a bad thing. Like weird, I use weird like neutrally. There's like this tint that becomes like less pronounced as you get closer, and things become like a lot more like vibrant and bright. I do like how like the thermal pack looks kind of like organic. And once again, we do have emphasis a bit on the heat, just like with all the vents and stuff. Once again, a more humanoid face, which kind of shows like a bit of like inquisitiveness and not like a fear of dying, which makes sense because this creature wants you to die, wants you to kill it. Well, also wants you to enter, so you could flicker it if you wanted to. So like it enters because we know it's a Thawbringer, so it's looking for something probably or bringing Thaw somewhere. So you play it. It looks for information via surveilling. It dies. You get information of its death. The other thing is interesting that like the background here, like they place this like plant here, like behind like this light, just like really emphasizes the light has something to actually hit back here, and really just like help draw attention to this light. Um, yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. I think that's all for today. I know usually I do one color at a time, and I already split green in half. But I don't know, maybe in the future maybe I split all the color analysis things in half. Just because I think I'm still figuring out how long I want these streams to be. And this stream was already like almost 2 hours. So I might just start doing colors in half in general. The exception might be sometimes multicolor, because multicolor doesn't usually have a majority of cards. So I think I'll stop for now. Thank you for stopping by, even if it wasn't for very long. I'll see you guys later.